Okay, so for this one, I referred you to the table on page 396. And where that comes in useful is for counting our days. We started on May 27th and went to August 14th. We look up in that table, May 27th is the 147th day of the year. August 14th is the 226th day of the year. 226 minus 147. What is it? 79 days. So 79 days goes in here. So then this will be 3,200 times 0.042 times 79 divided by 360. Give us $29.49 of interest. Does that look right? So then we have 3,200 plus 29.49 is $3,229.49, the maturity value for the amount repaid.
When you ask how much someone's going to pay back every time you add it to the...
Yes, you're looking for maturity value. Yep. Find the exact interest due if Pat borrows $11,000 on November 4th at 7.1% and pays it back on January 27th. This time I'm not asking for the maturity value, I'm just asking for the exact interest due. So the amount of interest, your principal of 11,000 times what's going in as my rate? 0.071. The time, of course, is going to be over what, 360 or 365? 365, because we didn't say exact. If we look up November 4th, what day does that give us? January 27th is just 27. Since this wraps around a year, we have to do this. We have to take 365 minus 308. That is 57 days from November 4th to the end of the year, plus the 27 days more. So that's going to give us 84 days. Any questions on how I got that 84 days? Basically doing it in two chunks, from November 4th to the end of the year, and then going to the January 27th from there. So we're filling in 84 days here. So this is going to be 11,000 times 0.071 times 84 divided by 360. $182.23? What's that?
You want to go over 365.
Over 365. You are correct. Times 360 divided by 365. Let's convert it back. 179.74 look better? So all I asked for was the interest, so we don't have to add that back on. If you did, that's okay. What we're going to look at next is something called the U.S. rule. The U.S. rule is for making partial payments on a debt before maturity. For example, let's say Chris borrows $12,000 at 8% for 90 days. This is done on simple interest. Chris probably does not have to pay that money back, any of that money back, till the end of the 90 days. But it's to Chris's benefit to pay back some early if they can, so that they'll save some of the interest. So let's say that on day 32, Chris pays $3,000. On day 57, Chris pays another $4,000. I want to find here the balance due at maturity and the total interest paid. Now remember, we said before, simple interest, you only calculate the interest and add it in when there's an action on the note. Making a payment on that loan is an action. So once that action is taken, before the action is processed, the interest has to be figured out and included into the balance. Now the way your book shows it, the book shows it as you subtract the interest from your payment first. And that is sort of correct. You do pay the interest first, kind of like paying shipping first for our invoicing stuff. But the technically accurate way of doing it is the balance is updated before the payment is made and included into the note. Let me show you what that means. So here for Chris, our first action is on day 90. And that is a $3,000 payment. I'm sorry, not day 90. What day is it on? 32. Day 32. Thank you. I'm really out of it tonight. I apologize. So, we need to find the interest. Well, the interest is going to be on the full balance of $12,000. What's our rate? 8% is 0.08. 32 over, doesn't say, does it? So that means 360. Oops. So 12,000 times 8% times 32 over 360. $85.33 is our interest. Now again, the way the book describes is you'd subtract that from the $3,000 payment and then subtract that much from the balance. What's technically happening is you take the old balance and you add the interest. So you get $12,085.33. That is the balance before your payment. Now, of course, we're making that payment of $3,000, so we're going to subtract $3,000. Gives us $9,085.33. That is your balance after the payment. When is the next action on the note? Day 57, a $4,000 payment. To figure out our interest, first of all, we're going to use the $9,085.33 as our principal now. Our rate is still 8% or 0.08. What's our time going to be? That's what most people would say is 57. But why can it not be 57? We've already done the first 32 days, right? So what's happened is we've gone 57 minus 32. There's 25 days that have gone by. So our interest is on those 25 days. Because we already figured out the interest up to day 32. This will be 25 over 360. So let's punch this in. 9085.33 times 0.08 times 25 divided by 360. $50.47 in interest. So once again, we're going to take that old balance of $9,085.33. We're going to add our $50.47 in interest to get $9,135.80. That is our balance before our payment. Now we are going to subtract $4,000 payment. It's going to give us $5,135.80. That is our balance after our payment. Any questions so far? Now when's our next action on this? There isn't one until day 90, the end. Maturity. So to find our interest, we're using a principal as our balance after the last payment. $5,135.80 times our rate is still 8%, so 0.08. What's our time going to be? We've already figured up day 57. So 90 minus 57 is going to be 33 days. So 51135.80 times 0.08 times 33 divided by 360. $37.66. So we'll go ahead and add that to our previous balance. So we get 6413. So $5,173.46. That is not just the balance due before payment, because this is the maturity. That's the balance due at maturity. Because we're now at the end of the loan. We have to pay that much back on that day. There was one other thing I had asked for. What was it? Total interest paid. So we have to add up 85.33, 50.47, 37.66 should give us a total interest of $173.46. Yes? Any questions? Unfortunately, yes. So, I know. Yeah, I know it is. Let's say Pat borrows Pat needs to stop borrowing. Pat borrows $4,000 at, I like that, 6.8% for 60 days. Actually, it's more common than you would think, especially in a business setting. For example, I used to run it, well, I still do sort of, but I used to do a lot more work. I used to run a construction company, and you get to a point where, okay, I haven't finished a job, but it's payday for my employees, and I don't have that extra cash, so I'll go to the bank and say, I'm going to finish this job in the next few weeks. I'm going to borrow enough money and I'll borrow it for 60 or 90 days to make sure I can make the next couple of payroll cycles if I don't finish this job yet. So I have that money sitting there, and then at the end of the job, I pay it back. In business, those short-term loans are like that are very common. Actually, that's not, I mean, it all depends. In business loans, a lot of it depends on the reputation of your business. Shorter term, a lot of times will be a higher rate. It all, yeah, a home loan is yes. The reason for that is they know they're, yeah, and actually even for home loans, it's the same way. If you take out a 15-year home loan compared to a 30-year mortgage, you're going to get at least 0.2% lower in many cases because they know they're going to get their money back faster. Because they're taking a risk that if interest rates go up, they could have made more money off of their money somewhere else. So the shorter the term, usually the lower their interest rates.
Less likely
Yeah. For these, though, the reason the rates are usually so high is there's no collateral. For a car loan, you have a car as collateral. Home loan, you have the house. Here, it's just going off your signature and your reputation. So let's say on day 28, Pat pays $2,000. Find the balance due at maturity and the total interest paid. I'll give you a couple minutes here. So our first action here is on day 28. Pat makes a payment of $2,000. So let's find the interest. 2,000 times what goes in for a rate? 0.068 times 28 over 360. So the interest of $10.58. So we're going to add that on. So our previous balance of $2,000 plus $10.58 is $2,010.58. That is our balance before our payment. Now from that, we're going to subtract the payment of $2,000. Where did I get $2,000 there? Hey, let's rewind there. I really sorry. That should be $4,000 principal. Your interest would be $21.16. Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Yep. So let's redo this here. Let's go through this again. On day 28, they make a $2,000 payment. The principal is still $4,000 times a rate of 0.068 times 28 over 360. If we punch that in, we get $21.16 in interest. So now we are going to take our balance, previous balance of $4,000, and we're going to add to that the $21.16 of interest. Get $4,021.16. That is our balance before the payment. Now what do? Now we subtract $2,000 payment. Get $2,021.16. That is our balance after the payment. Is everybody caught up, or anybody need me to pause to give them time to correct their notes? Okay. So then our next action is going to be on the final day, which is day 60. It's a 60-day note. On day 60, of course, that is maturity. So we have to find out the interest that is built up. So we're going to use the 2021.16 times 0.068. And we do have 60 days minus 28 is going to be 32 days. 32 over 360. So 2021.16 times 0.068 times 32 divided by 360. $12.22. So now we have to add that to the previous balance. 2021.16 plus 1222 is 2033.38. That is our balance before our payment. Actually, it's not our balance before our payment. That's our balance due at maturity. Final balance, yeah, that would be fine. Total interest was how much? Perfect. Total interest is $33.38. Not so bad if I don't screw you up right from the beginning, right? Okay. I'll try to stay awake through the next couple of examples so I don't mess you up. Yeah. From now on, just assume that I'm wrong if everybody's got a different number than me. At this time of night, you guys are never going to get the best of me, and I apologize for that. I'm best up until about 5 o'clock. Then every part of me wants to take a nap. So, on April 21st, Tom borrows $9,000 on a 120-day note for 5.3%. On May 28th, Tom pays $3,500. On July 6th, Tom pays $2,500. Find the balance due at maturity and total interest. Well, I'm going to go to my table in the book and look up these days right away. April 21st is what? 111? May 28th? 148. July 6th is 187. So now let's go ahead and proceed through this. Our first action, April 21st was the inception of the loan. So that's not an action, that's just the beginning of everything. The first action that's on the loan is May 28th. So we need to figure out our days here. Is 148 minus 111, which is going to give us 37 days. So our interest is going to be on $9,000 times 0.053 times 37 over 360. Gives us interest of $49.03. Does that look correct? Okay. So now we're going to take our previous balance, $9,000, add our interest of $49.03, get $9,049.03. That is the balance before our payment. Now what? Subtract 3,500. We get $5,549.03. There's our balance after the payment. Our next action comes on July 6th. We're going to figure out our days here. July 6th is 187. The last action was May 28th, which is 148. So 187 minus 148 is 39 days. So our interest is going to be calculated off this previous balance of $55.49.03 times 0.053, was it? Yep. Times 39 over 360. $31.86. So where's that go? Take the $59.49.03, which is our previous balance. We're going to add that interest, $31.86 to it. So $55.80.89 is the balance before payment. Now we're going to add, or we're going to subtract from that our payment of $2,500. Which will give us $3,500. $80.89. That is our balance after the payment. That is our final action until the maturity. Now we need to figure out the days here. This was a 120-day note. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say we've already used 37 and 39 days. So from my 120 days, I'm going to subtract 37 and 39. That's what, 44 days left? So I'm going to calculate my interest on my previous balance of $3,080.89 times my rate of 0.053 times 44 over 360. 3080.89 times 0.053 times 44 over 360. $19.96 in interest. Adding that to our previous balance. Which is going to give us $3,100.85 is our balance before, or that's actually balance at maturity. Total interest paid. If I add them up, I've got $19.96, $31.86, and $49.03 is $100.85 total interest. What do you think? Having fun yet? No? On October 29th, Steve borrows $15,000 at 7.9% for 90 days. On December 3rd, Steve pays $6,200. On January 4th, Steve pays an additional $4,900. Find, again, balance due at maturity and total interest. We'll give you some time in your notes to give that one a shot. So the first action here comes on December 3rd. The days, well, December 3rd is 3/37. The loan began on October 29th, which is 3/02. So that's 35 days. So we'll figure our interest on that 35 days. So 15,000 times 0.079 times 35 over 360. gives us $115.21. So we'll add that back on. So $15,115.21 is our balance before the payment. We're going to subtract the payment of $6,200. So that leaves us $8,915.21 is our balance after the payment. How many people have that answer after the first payment? Okay, good deal. Our next action on the loan is on January 4th. That was a $4,900 payment. We got to figure our days again. January 4th, of course, is day 4. December 3rd was day 337. What we have to do is we have to subtract that 337 from 365, which is 28 days, and add the 4 to that to give ourselves 32 days between December 3rd and January 4th. So now we'll figure out our interest based on the previous balance, 8915.21 times 0.079 times 32 over 360. So 8915.21 times 0.079 times 32 by 260. $62.60 in interest. And we add it back on. Which would give us $8,977.81 is our balance before the payment. Then what? Just subtract the $4,900 payment first. So $4,077.81. Balance after payment. You have the right idea, though. That's where we're heading next. And yes, now our next action is maturity. And I'm going to figure my days the same way. This is a 90-day loan. I have used 32 and 35 days. So from 90, I subtract 32 and 35. Gives me 23 days left. So my interest is found off that previous balance of $4,077.81 and 0.079, 23 over 360. $20.58 is our new interest. We're going to add that on the previous balance. $4,098.39 is the balance due at maturity. Total interest paid is $198.39. Perfect. Any questions? Okay, I've gone a little bit past our break. Does anybody need a break? Or I just keep going? I'm going to ask this question a little bit differently. It's going to be the same type of question. I'm just going to ask for a little bit different things, and I want to see if you can pick them out. So, on July 29th, Pete borrows $8,300 at 4.8% for, we'll go 90 days. On September 6th, Pete pays $3,600. Find the balance after the payment that's number one. Number two, balance due at maturity and three, total interest. So I'll give you a couple minutes to try that. Okay, so what I asked for here is not that much different. Well, it's nothing different than what we've already calculated. It's just never been something we specifically asked for you to report. So let's look at our days again. July 29th is day 210. September 6th is day 249. We started on July 29th, so our first action on the loan is September 6th. So our days, 249 minus 210 is 39 days. So our interest is going to be calculated off of that. So we're looking at $8,300 principal, 0.048 times 39 over 360. So I did something wrong there. Is that what you came up with? Yeah, it should be 4316, shouldn't it? Yeah. $43.16. So 8,300 plus 4316. $8,343.16 is our balance before the payment. Is that what we're looking for? No. So we're going to subtract our payment of $3,600. $4,743.16. That's our balance after the payment. That is the answer to the first question. Balance after the payment. What's our next action? Maturity. Well, our next action on the account is maturity. So now we're going to find our days. We've It's 90 days and we've used 39. So it's 51 days left. So our interest, $4,743.16 balance times point, was it 048? Yeah. 048 times 51 over 360. So 4743.16 times 0.048 times 51 divided by 360. Gives us $32.25. That's our interest. We're going to add it on. It's $4,775.41. That is our balance due at maturity. That was our answer to question number 2. For question number 3, total interest is just $75.41. How many of you had all that? Good. Any questions? It's just a long process and it's a lot to keep track of. Now, I have a specific way I organize things. I would encourage you to come up with your own way. If my way works, that's great. Come up with your own way of organizing these and so that you know what each piece means, because on a quiz or a test, I might ask for the balance after the payment. I might ask for the balance before the payment. I might ask, what amount does the balance change due to the payment? Well, the amount that the balance changes due to the payment is the difference between this amount and that amount. It does not, or sorry, not that amount. The amount before everything would be the 8,300. Notice it's not 3,600 is not the difference, because we had the interest that was included in there. So that would be the balance, the change in the balance due to the payment. It's lessened by the fact that we have to put in the interest before we make the payment. So those are all little things. Come up with your own way of organizing it so you can look at it and pick out that information so you know what each piece means. All right, the last thing I want to talk about today, what we've been talking about so far is all what we called interest-bearing notes. And more specifically, simple interest-bearing notes. So let's say I have a note of a face value of $10,000. What that means is that my principal is going to equal $10,000. It equals the face value. My maturity value is going to equal that principal plus whatever interest I get. So the interest, again, is principal times rate times time. That's the way most of us are used to thinking about interest and loans and stuff like that. But there is a second type of note that we're going to be talking about. We're going to spend a lot of time on next week. And this is all that we've been doing is simple interest notes. What we're going to look at next week is simple discount notes. In a simple discount note, let's say we have a face value of $10,000. You are not going to get $10,000. the face value of the $10,000 is the maturity value. $10,000 is what you are going to pay back. So what's going to happen is you're going to get some sort of proceeds. To that, you're going to add the interest, which is called a discount. That's going to get you to that face value of $10,000. The difference is, in the simple interest-bearing note, it was a face value of $10,000. They just gave you $10,000 in principal and added the interest on later. In a simple discount note, it has a face value of $10,000. They have to calculate a discount. That discount is just your interest. It is your principal, which is your face value in this case, times your rate, times your time. So technically what is happening in a simple discount note is they are taking the amount that you are going to pay back, the maturity value. They're calculating the discount and subtracting it out to give you what they're, to figure out how much they're going to actually give you. So the question is, does this happen very often, and when would you ever want to do it? Well, there are a few major applications of this. The first one, Treasury bonds, or savings bonds, if you want to call them that. Has anybody ever in here ever bought savings bonds, U.S. savings bonds or Treasury bonds? Okay. If you go to buy a $50 bond, do you pay $50? No. The $50 bond, it says $50, it's its face value, because if you keep it for the specified amount of time, it will be worth $50 at the end. So what happens is they're going to deduct a discount. So it's going to be $50 minus a discount is going to equal what you pay. That is what is often called the proceeds. So let's take a look at that. Let's say that you have a $50 savings bond. A $50 3-year savings bond. At a 1.8% rate. How much are you going to pay for it? Well, your discount is just your interest. So it's going to be your principal, your face value of $50 times your rate of 0.018 times your time of 3. Gives you $2.70. So what you would pay for this, $50 minus $2.70 is $47.30. Now most savings bonds are not 3 years. Usually they're 5, 10, 15 years. So you get a bigger discount. I think they're like 0.9% or something like that. But 0.9% comes out to like 90 cents. Well, I mean, is anything worth investing in right now? We're at a point where there's very little inflation, but there are other items that are increasing in value faster than any savings or investments you can do. Although the market has done pretty well if you invest in individual stocks. I've seen roughly an 8 or 9% increase in the last year in the stock market. So there are investments. What's that? Well, I've got a long time left before I can retire, so I can go into higher risks without having to worry about it. Yeah. So anyway, that's one of the applications, the savings bond. Another application where a discount note is often used is, let's say you know you're going to have a certain amount of money coming in. I used the example earlier of a construction job where I needed that money to make payroll for my employees. Well, let's say I know that I'm going to be finishing up this job, and I know that in about 90 days, I'm going to have $12,000 coming from this job. What I'm going to do, I'm going to discount that $12,000. I'm going to go to the bank and I'm going to borrow based on that $12,000. Of course, the bank isn't going to give me $12,000 net interest to it because I don't have more than $12,000 coming in. I just have the $12,000. So they're going to discount that. So let's say they're going to lend it to me at 4.2%. So they're going to find their discount, which again is just the interest. That'll be 12,000 times 0.042 times 90 over 360. Which is $126. So what they're going to give me is $12,000 minus $126. So they're going to give me $11,874. Then at the end of the 90 days, I'm going to pay back the full $12,000. Now, one thing you'll notice here, they charged me interest on the full $12,000. They didn't give me the full $12,000, did they? So the interest rate of 4.2% is what's called a nominal rate. It's what's named on the note. But there is a somewhat larger effective rate, because the effective rate is figuring it out on the amount of money they actually give me. Now, we're not going to do that tonight. That's something we're going to look at next week. A third application where a discount note would be used is, let's say I lend money to you. I'm running a business. Let's put it this way. I'm running a business where you have a retail shop and I supply you with items that you sell in your shop. So you purchase these items from me. And remember, on our invoices, you had like 210 net 30 or whatever. You get to the end of the 30 days and you can't pay off your balance. Well, I'm not going to extend you credit anymore unless you give me an incentive. So let's say we convert that over to a 90-day note. For, let's say you still owe me $3,500, and I'm going to charge you 12% interest. Now, looking at that, you're thinking 12% is really high interest. And it is, but that is very, very common. 12%, 9% are the two most common in retail borrowing like this. It's outside the professional investment of banks. And the reason they use such high rates is really easy to calculate. 12% interest is 1% a month. And so when they do their billing every month, they just add 1% to the bill. 9% would be 0.75%, or 0.75% a month. 6% is just too low, so they don't use that apparently. So anyway, I extend this note to you because you couldn't afford to pay me. But I don't want to sit there and sit on this note. I'm not in the business of lending money. I'm in the business of producing products and selling them to retailers. So I don't want to sit on this note and wait for you to pay. So I'm going to go to the bank, and I'm going to sell them the note. That is called discounting the note. Now, this is a little different because it's not going to be $3,500 that's coming in, is it? I'm going to get $3,500 plus 12% interest. So before I can discount this to the bank, before the bank figures out how much they're going to give me for it, we have to figure out how much it's worth. So we're going to find the original maturity value. So we're going to find our original interest, which is 3,500 times 0.12 times 90 over 360. Gives us $105 of interest. So our maturity value, I'm just going to add those together. 3,500 and 105 is $3,605. That's our maturity value. The bank is going to lend me money based on that. At the end of the 90 days, that's how much you are supposed to repay me. So now let's say the bank charges a 10% discount. Now let's look at this. This is a good thing. Because I'm charging you 12% and the bank's only going to charge me 10% to take it off my hands, right? Does that mean I get a 2% profit? Not totally. Because I charged you 12% on this amount, the $3,500. The bank is going to charge me 10% on this amount after my interest is added in. I'm still going to make money off of it, but not a full 2%. So this bank is going to take over this amount. We're going to find that discount, which again is just equal to my interest on the 3,605 at 10% for 90 days. So it's $90.13 is their discount. So they'll subtract that from the 3,605 is the face value of the bank's loan to me, minus $90.13. It's $35, 3,500 and what does that come out to be? $14.87. So that's how much they're going to give to me. So I made $14.87 off this transaction. Now there might be times where I lose money off this transaction. If the bank's discount rate is equal to my rate, I'm going to lose money because I'm paying interest on the full amount, not just the principal. Or if the bank's discount rate is higher than my rate, I'm going to lose money on it. But to me, I'm not in the business to finance. It's worth it to me so that to get the money so I can go on with my business and let the bank worry about the financing. Some things I can do to increase my profit. Well, rather than turning around and selling it to the bank right away, I can hang on to it for 10 days, 20 days, or whatever, so that the bank's going to charge me less of a discount. That's, again, stuff we're going to look at next week. That is pretty much it for this week. So I'll let you guys off the hook. Since we had a test last week, there is no quiz this week, but there is new homework due for next Thursday's class. Also, make sure you're looking at your tests, figuring out your corrections, so you can get those to me in the next couple weeks. Have a great night.